Hey, good morning. It's Friday. It's what is today? I'm losing track of what the day is. Excuse me a minute. I've got something else I need to reset. It's gone. I apologize for that. Hey, Mike, right here with Tax Right, the sponsor of the Red Shoe Business Club. And this is the 20th edition of this program. We've done this for 4 weeks now, and there's only 2 weeks left to go. There's still some exciting stuff to talk about, and I hope that you found it worthwhile, and I hope that you'll find what remains worthwhile. Please, I invite you at any time to make a comment on Facebook, make a comment to my email, mike@taxright.net, or just play along. Comment on YouTube when these things are posted there. I'd like to hear your feedback. When we now have 10 more episodes of this to do, I would love to hear from somebody out there to let me know what other things you would like for me to cover or what things you would like for me to explain more fully, because we have some time to do that. So please participate, get involved, engage with the system, and I think you'll find that worthwhile as well. Plus which, those comments, when they go on YouTube particularly, are available there for other people to share and look at. I have one other thing to say. I notice when I look at myself on the screen, I seem nice and bright, but when it shows up on YouTube, it looks rather dim. Now, I suspect it may have to do with the equipment that I'm using. I don't know for sure. But if anybody has any comments about that or what kind of equipment might work better for this, I'd appreciate hearing back from you. Again, comments or mike@taxright.net. Also, my microphone failed me again, so I'm using the alternative microphone. So particularly when I turn around to write on the board, things may get a little quieter than you want them to be. So I promised to talk about operations today. What are operations? Operations are what your business does. Generally speaking, operations are different from things like marketing, things like finance. They have to do with what it is you do to make your money. Remember when we talked about being in business, we talked about your activities have to rise to the level of a trade or business. Well, operations are what makes what you do a trade or business. It's what you do. The why and the what for, the values, the mission, the goals, all of those things are other parts of the entire business world, the universe that is your business, but the operations are what you do. And operations can also be related to systems. Systems simply mean an organized way of going step by step to do the things you do. Now, you can have marketing systems, you can have finance systems, you can have sales systems, you can have research systems. These are all organized lists, if you will, of how things should happen step by step, so that there's no question about what you're doing. There's no question about what's the next step. There's no question about how would I pick up in the middle of this. If you're a single operator, a trained professional expert like me, a tax guy, or if you're a physician, or if you're a chiropractor, a therapist, if everything that you do operationally has to do with you yourself, then oftentimes we tend to ignore the idea of systems because we think, I know what to do next. And yes, I do. I'm not denying that. But here's the thing. If you want your business to be anything beyond you, if you want it to be an actual business, then there need to be steps that you can recognize, identify, and teach to other people that will allow your business to operate the way you want it to operate, even if you're not there. In fact, one definition of a business relates to the fact that you're doing what you want to see accomplished without you being present. What do you do in your business when you go on vacation? What do you do in your business if you get ill? What do you do in your business if you need to bring on somebody new? Do you have operational ideas set out in such a way that you can provide them with a training manual? This is what systems will do for you. And this is something that I want you to think about very carefully. Look, whenever you start out your business, you generally start from the standpoint of, I'm pretty good at whatever it is I do. So I'm going to start a business because I think I can make more money doing it, or I can make the changes that I think ought to be made to have it serve my clients better. That's the initial vision. That's usually the initial startup idea. And if, as I said just a minute ago, if you're an expert at something, then you have a very good idea of what you want to accomplish and how to do it. But you need to stop and think about what you're doing. There are a lot of situations related to this that you need to think about in the systems world. So one of the first things you need is step by step. This is important for every business, no matter what the structure of it is. And let me tell you, if you're an expert and think, oh, Mike, that's really stupid, I know what to do, think of what you might be able to learn by making a step-by-step analysis of what you do. Because by examining the steps and what comes next, you can bring in some of the tools that we've talked about in this series earlier. You can bring in the tools to think about, well, what's the one thing? If you've never analyzed how you do what you do, it's quite probable that you're simply operating off habit, that you're simply doing what comes next because you think that's the only way to do it. But by stopping to think and analyze that step by step, you may be able to find a better way to do what you do that makes life easier for you, that maybe eliminates some of the steps that you've always taken in the past. And then when you take the next step of wanting to bring somebody else on board, or the step of having somebody to be able to cover for you if there is a problem, then you can also use that analysis to understand a better way for them to do that as well. So the writing out the step-by-step systems that you use has a twofold purpose. One of them is that analysis that I talk about a lot, because it allows you to take a fresh look at what you're doing and decide how to make it better, or if you can make it better. Or if you decide that everything you do is the most perfect way that there is to do it, then by all means you need to write it down so that you can train everybody else, and you can write a book about it so that you can revolutionize the world. If you notice a little bit of sarcasm in my voice, that's because I know that not everything that any of us do is the most perfect way to do what we do in the world. There are reasons for doing it the way we have done. But that step-by-step analysis is an important step. I know it sounds silly, but it is. I recommend a book called The E-Myth. The author is, hang on a second. Shoot, I don't see it. I'm sorry. I don't see the author's name. It's E-Myth. There's also a new version of it called The E-Myth Revisited. It is based on the idea that if you start a business and what you're doing is something that you developed yourself or something that you have because of your expertise, and you want to expand beyond what you can personally do, systems are what you need. And the E-Myth books are the best example for a small business approach to this idea. because he will talk about how you separate and segregate. We do a step by step for each of the systems that you want. We've talked about marketing, we've talked about finance, but you also want to look at the systems. How do you onboard clients? Once your marketing is successful, how do you onboard a client? Once you have a client satisfied, how do you offboard that client? How do you put that client in a position to be able to want to buy from you again if that's appropriate? Or, and this is always appropriate, how do you get that client to give you a referral? Whether you put those referrals on Google or whether you get them in the form of a written testimonial, whatever it is that you get, what are the steps that you take to do that? So step by step, the E-Myth, but there are dozens of other books that you could research to find the way to put systems into place. I just recommend that one because A, I've read it and I've utilized it, and it also is geared toward the kinds of small businesses that you and I run. The next thing you want to remember when you're dealing with systems is passing them on. Now, you may say, on the one hand, well, Mike, I'm never going to hire employees. I'm as big as I ever want to get, and I'm happy where I am. That's fine. But at some point, you're going to want to close that business, pass that business on. Now, it may be because you suddenly get ill, or because you drop dead at your desk, or it may be because your kids, you want to be able to give it to your kids, or it may be because you want to find a new owner and you want to pass it on. Whatever the reason is, without having well-established and ordered systems, you can't do that. It's very common for people in a business that they're going to sell to promise to work as a consultant for that business for a period of time after the sale takes place. The idea being that they will pass along their knowledge and their understanding of how the business works. And that's possibly true. But here's the thing. If you've already gotten your systems written out, if you've already done your step-by-step, then when you pass it on, it's simply a matter of giving that information directly to whoever it is that you want to have that information for whatever reason you want them to have it. Whether it's for the sale of the business, because suddenly somebody has to step in and take over. Please never forget the fact that something could happen to you that you're totally unprepared for happening. And you have to consider the fact that you have left clients, and you may have left employees. You certainly have left a family or other stakeholders in you and your life in a position where they need to be able to step in and pick up. Look, this passing on issue is one of the hardest things that there is for anyone to do, because emotionally we don't want to admit the fact that we may not be ready to pass on. Secondly, even if our plan has been from the beginning to build the business up to a certain level and then get rid of it and take the money and run, so to speak, we don't want to we're not ready to have all this stuff ready to pass on. We have this good business, we have things ready that are running to our satisfaction. And then if we go to try to sell it to somebody else, if we don't have the information to pass on, then we're not selling them anything but a mailing list to speak of. So if you follow this idea that you have operations, that you need to systematize them, that you systematize them by doing it step by step, then you're in a position to be able to pass it on more easily and for things to be set up to be passed on. A little over a year ago, I had a stroke, and it happened. The worst possible time was the day before the April 15th tax deadline. And fortunately, I had some people that were at the time working for me, but they were not prepared, and I was not prepared. And if my stroke had been more serious, there would have been real problems. I was able to cover this because I wasn't dead. and because I was able to send out emails the next day, apologize for the problem, and make up for the difference as we went forward. That taught me a lesson, but I will confess this. It did not teach me as much of a lesson as it should have, because while I do have a system in place for that particular problem, I have not expanded that systemization into other areas as well. So from firsthand experience, I can tell you it's hard, but it's also extremely important. So think about that. That's why operations are important. I've talked before, and we'll wrap up with this point. I've talked before about the fact that you started your business as a plumber. You're still a plumber, but you also have a business. You started your business as a therapist. You're still a therapist, but in addition to doing therapy, you run a business. That's what operations are about. That's what we're talking about here. How do you put things to systematize what you know to do in a way that makes your business real and viable and separate from yourself? So that's it for today. That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me. I will put out a list over the weekend of the topics for next week. And again, I invite you one more time to get in touch with me and let me know if there's something else you'd like to know something about. So until next week, take care.